Welcome to this explainer. Now, I have to give you a quick warning right off the bat. Just talking about this topic, or even thinking about it a little too hard, is probably going to make you do it. Yep, today we're exploring the everyday mystery of yawning. It's something literally every single one of us does, but as you're about to see, the science behind it is vastly more fascinating and way more complex than we ever realized. So picture this totally familiar scenario. You're driving down a long street stretch of highway on a sunny afternoon. You're trying your absolute best to stay alert, but man, that sleep pressure is really building up. Suddenly, you let out a massive yawn, you stretch your arms out, you shift in your seat. Most of us just write this off as a simple sign of being bored or sleepy. But why do we actually do this? Like, what is the biological purpose of this incredibly specific physical reflex? Okay, let's immediately bust the biggest myth out there. You have probably heard your whole life that we yawn to get more oxygen into our bloodstream, right? Well, studies have completely debunked this. Researchers actually tested this by having people breathe 100% oxygen, and guess what? It didn't change their yawning rates at all. Breathing higher levels of carbon dioxide didn't do anything either. So if it's not about respiration, what is the whole point? The fact is, a yawn is actually a deeply complex physiological mechanism used to regulate the brain. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the primordial mystery of the yawn itself. Second, how yawning acts as the brain's natural radiator. Third, we'll dive into some breakthrough research on how yawning might literally flush waste out of our heads. Fourth, the clinical medical clues a yawn can provide. And finally, why is it so famously contagious? Section 1. The Mystery of the Yawn. You know, it's pretty amazing how something so universally common is still so mysterious. I mean, human fetuses yawn in the womb, crocodiles yawn, even dinosaurs probably yawned. But to actually solve the mystery, we have to look at what triggers it in the real world. We know it happens when we're tired, sure, but it also spikes when people have fevers, when they're under high stress, or when they encounter specific social and psychological cues. So what do all these totally disconnected states have in common? Well, they're all states of transitioning arousal that involve slight shifts in our body's internal temperature. And that right there brings us to the real evolutionary genius of the yawn.
Section 2. The brain's natural radiator.
To really understand a yawn, you kind of have to stop thinking of your brain as a computer and start thinking of it as a high-performance engine, an engine that runs really hot and desperately needs a coolant to prevent damage. In humans, our brain tissue actually runs up to 1 degree Celsius warmer than the rest of our body. The venous blood leaving the brain is genuinely warmer than the arterial blood entering it. Our brains have to operate in a very, very narrow band of temperature to maintain a steady, balanced state, what we call homeostasis. If the brain gets too hot, it risks cell damage, seizures, or even swelling. So think about what happens physiologically when you yawn. It is way more than just opening your mouth. First, a yawn accelerates your heart rate. Then, that powerful stretching of your jaw acts like a peripheral pump, basically squeezing and increasing blood flow all through your neck, head, and face. At the same time, you're taking this huge, deep inhalation of cooler ambient air, which cools the blood in your nasal cavities. Even the thin walls of your paranasal sinuses actually flex during that jaw stretch, ventilating the whole system. When you put all that together, these actions flush hyperthermic, warm blood out of the skull and pull cooler arterial blood in. It is quite literally a biological radiator. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how much the outside environment impacts this radiator. There was this fascinating study conducted in Tucson, Arizona, where researchers showed pedestrians pictures of people yawning to see if they could trigger a contagious response. And they did this across 2 different seasons. In the winter, when the ambient temperature was a pretty comfortable 22 degrees Celsius, people yawned at a really high rate. But in the blistering summer, when the temperature was 37 degrees, which completely matches human body temperature, yawning just plummeted. People were nearly twice as likely to yawn in the winter. This perfectly supports what scientists call the thermal window hypothesis. A yawn only works as a cooling mechanism if the air you are breathing in is actually cooler than your blood. If the outside air is 37 degrees or hotter, sucking that air into your head doesn't cool the brain at all. In fact, it's counterproductive. So, your central nervous system just simply suppresses the yawning reflex. Your body knows exactly when a yawn is going to be helpful and when it isn't. Section 3. Flushing out brain waste. Now, while that temperature regulation theory is incredibly strong, researchers at UNSW Sydney recently used real-time MRI scans to add a completely mind-bending layer to this whole puzzle. Professor Lynn Bilston, who led the team, noted something amazing. She said, "Our research suggests that yawning can play a role in cleaning brain fluid, which would most likely happen close to bedtime." Guys, this is a staggering implication. We have known for a while that cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, cushions the brain and carries waste products out. But this study suggests a simple yawn acts as a literal mechanical pump to clear out that waste. Those MRI scans revealed a really stark contrast. The researchers had participants just take a deep, normal breath. And during a deep breath, venous blood drains out of the skull, but the cerebrospinal fluid actually flows into the skull. However, when they triggered a true, genuine, contagious yawn in the participants, something completely different happened. Both the cerebrospinal fluid and the venous blood moved out of the skull together. The yawn forces a totally unique flush of fluids away from the brain. Oh, and as a quick, super surprising side note from that same UNSW research, they discovered that your yawn is entirely unique to you. The motion of your tongue during a yawn is highly complex, but it's very consistent for each individual. The researchers noted it's almost like a biometric fingerprint. You could potentially identify someone just by analyzing the completely unique choreography of their tongue when they yawn. Wild, right? Section 4, Medical Clues in a Yawn. Because we now understand that yawning is so deeply tied to thermoregulation and clearing out brain fluids, abnormal yawning can actually be a warning light flashing on your body's dashboard. Patients suffering from multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, severe migraines, or even high anxiety often report debilitating attacks of excessive yawning. We're talking sometimes yawning up to 15 times a day in episodes lasting 45 minutes. And all of these conditions are linked to thermoregulatory dysfunction, which is where the body struggles to maintain core temperature, causing the brain to heat up. So that relentless yawning is really the body's desperate adaptive attempt to cool a hyperthermic brain. What's really amazing is how doctors are using this knowledge to treat these yawning attacks. Since the yawning is caused by a hot brain, treatments aimed at cooling the brain actually stop the yawning. Behavioral cooling, like breathing exclusively through the nose or placing cold packs right on the forehead, can completely eliminate the urge. In some medical case studies, physicians have even successfully used propranolol, which is a medication that lowers body temperature, to completely extinguish extended periods of frequent, uncontrollable yawning in patients. Section 5. Why is it contagious? So we've covered the mechanics, the cooling, and the fluid flushing, but we have to address the elephant in the room. Why on earth does seeing a friend, a stranger, or even a dog yawn trigger the reflex in you? Well, contagious yawning evolved in highly social species, like humans, chimpanzees, and some birds, as a tool for collective survival. Because a yawn stimulates arousal and increases blood flow to the brain, it literally pulls an individual out of a sluggish state. When one member of a group yawns, the contagion ripples through the group, syncing everyone's arousal levels and enhancing collective group vigilance against threats. Plus, the physical act of yawning actually activates the tensor tympani muscles in your ears, literally resetting the range of movement of your eardrum to better monitor the surrounding environment. But here is where all this science connects back together beautifully. Even this deeply ingrained social contagion is completely overridden by basic thermoregulation. No matter how many people yawn around you, no matter how strong that social cue to sync up group vigilance is, if your brain is already running too hot, or if the outside air is too warm to offer any cooling benefit, your body will simply refuse to catch the yawn. Physiology trumps social empathy every single time. So, we arrive at our final thought. The next time you feel a yawn coming on, definitely don't try to stifle it because you think it looks rude or bored. You are activating an evolutionary masterpiece, a biological radiator that flushes toxic waste from your spinal fluid, cools your most vital organ, and resets your sensory awareness. Could the secret to maintaining a healthier, sharper brain as we age really be as simple as letting out a good deep yawn? It is definitely something to think about right after your next big stretch. Thanks for watching this explainer.